Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay. Its far north gate and southern trails came Walker Boone and Kenton too. Kentucky, she is calling, a place of history. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place to work and play. Oh, Kentucky, Kentucky County, a place I want to stay. I'm John Stevenson. June Guyman and I are glad to be back off our trip across Kentucky. We traveled some 42,000 miles gathering the history of Kentucky county by county and its tourism attractions. We hope you will appreciate the films of the history of Kentucky by your congressional districts as much as we appreciated the opportunity of traveling through Kentucky some 42,000 miles. Thank you. Now enjoy the history of Kentucky. At this time, let me introduce to you, to give you an overview of Kentucky history, Dr. Thomas Clark.
Dr. Clark, we want to thank you for being with us.
I'm happy to be with you.
What can you tell us? We have been to every county in Kentucky. We've collected the information about the history of each county. We've come to you, Mr. History, to help us close our documentation on Kentucky by telling us a little bit how Kentucky itself got formed.
Well, Kentucky had a bit of a nebulous beginning. This was a wide open, unexplored wilderness territory on this side of the mountains. You begin to see an opening of the door as early as the middle decades of the 18th century. By 1760, Kentucky was gradually coming into focus, and by 1770, it was pretty well explored by the long hunters that came in, and then of course that famous party, they were long hunters too, of Daniel Boone and John Finley, who came into this state. Now, contrary, I think, to popular belief, this was not a region unmarked by no trails or no landmarks. There were buffalo traces, Indian traces across the state. As you know, no major Indian tribe occupied this state. This was a borderland between the northern Indians, the Shawnees with all their associated tribes, and the southern Chickasaw, are grouped to the south. And there was a great deal of rivalry between them to claim this hunting ground. Now, Kentucky, you know, geographically is of a highly varied nature, highly sectionalized nature. This central cane land here, or what you know as the Bluegrass Plateau, was a very famous grazing ground. There were salt licks scattered around all over the state where animals congregated, and the skin trade, the Indian trade, was a fairly rich one that originated here. In the early records, you have stories of the long hunters pursuing both the fur trade and the skin trade, but the major emphasis was upon the skin trade itself. Then, of course, in the middle of the 18th century, the rivalry between the French and the British, and you began to having those land speculators or surveyors like Thomas Walker, Christopher Gist coming into the region, making those preliminary so-called surveys in quotation marks. From 1760 on, the British were in control of this territory. The British undertook to check population expansion in this direction in the proclamation of 1763, which they were unsuccessful in doing. After 1770, you had a population movement into this region with the establishment in 1774 and 75 of Harrodsburg, or Harrodstown, and Boonesboro, Logan's Fort, and then Bryan Station, Lexington Fort. We're standing right now almost on the ground where the Lexington Fort was located. From that time on, there was a great population movement into this region that you know as Kentucky, concentrated largely in this central bluegrass area, but population in time was to expand into other areas of the state.
What were the first counties in Kentucky?
Well, Kentucky County was the first one in 1776. that was simply a blanket. Well, I believe back of that there was Fincastle County, but Kentucky County was simply a blanket spread of Virginia authority into this western country. Then in 1780 they were created the first three counties, Lafayette, Fayette, Lincoln, and Jefferson counties. Fayette County covered all the area north of the Kentucky River. Lincoln County, the area east of Benson's Creek, and Jefferson County south of the Kentucky River and west and south of Benson's Creek. Benson Creek's mouth is just opposite, about where that office plaza is in Frankfort at the present time.
Okay. During the interview, we're standing on West Main Street, which is right across from the old Fayette County Courthouse. What is the significance of this area, Dr. Clark?
We're standing in a very historic spot here. Right here to my right, where this Radisson Hotel is located, is the site of the old Fort Lexington. It was built here on this town creek with trim cane all around it. They cleared the cane all around it, build a fort, and give them visibility, not to be surprised by a sneak Indian attack. Right to my right, on the corner of Main and Mill Street, is where the office of the True American stood. That was an anti-slavery paper published by Cassius M. Clay here in the very heart of Kentucky slavery, which that office was raided illegally so, in violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution. It was packed up. Later on, the courts granted Cassius M. Clay restitution, and he collected damages for it. To my back is Cheapside. Cheapside has a long and romantic history. Here within 50 feet of where we are standing was the scene of the slave auctions, where slaves were sold out of this bluegrass region to the expanding cotton belt in the south. It's also the scene of the great court day markets in which the livestock trade was carried on. This place used to be crowded with horses, cows, sheep, every kind of, all dogs, everything that people had to trade come in on court day and gather around this spot. Two, it was a great political stumping ground for politicians. I could not tell you the speakers who have lifted their voice in seeking office in this square to our back. The building immediately behind us is the 5th courthouse to stand on this spot. The first one was constructed in 1788. They were either burned or torn down because they were antiquated. The 4th courthouse contained the wonderful piece of Kentucky artistry, Woman Triumphant, by the famous artist, just a moment, I'll think, Joel Tanner Hart. The courthouse burned down and destroyed that wonderful piece of statuary. I had an forearm of that graceful figure, which I gave to the University of Kentucky. So far as I know, that's the only existing relic of that. Here were conducted trials, lawyers, a string of Kentucky famous lawyers, John Breckinridge, Caleb Wallace, George Nicholas, on down Henry Clay, on down through lawyers of the most famous of the Kentucky bars practiced in this courthouse across the street. That is one of its predecessors. Here it was, right after World War II, that the Army was called out, not the militia. The regular Army was called out to quell a lynch mob in the famous Leavitt trial, in which this square was seething with people with ropes and tar, threatening to lynch that Negro boy. The Army veterans brought from the battlefield of France stood off the mob, and the trial proceeded in an orderly way. It is also a square, a statuary of John Hunt Morgan's equestrian statue is over to our left. John Breckinridge's statue is here to our on Sheepside. This was the center of the business area of Lexington. Not only Lexington, but it was a kind of a commercial nerve center for all of eastern Kentucky and all of central Kentucky. Louisville, after 1820, became the major commercial city of the state.
Choosing a selection of the capital of the state, how was that done?
That's a pretty complicated issue. Of course, you would have thought they would have chosen one of the major towns in the state, like Lexington or Louisville, or Danville, for instance, or Harrodsburg, but they didn't. They went to Frankfort for various reasons, and I'm not sure that I'm entirely right about all of them, but one of the reasons, it was located near the center of Kentucky population at the time. It also was located on the river, easy access by water. The people of Frankfort supplied some materials and support for the building of a capital, and like all things, everlastingly, including the observation of the Ten Commandments in Kentucky, there's some kind of political implication involved.
Okay. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, besides the immense amounts of knowledge that you possess? How did you get interested in history?
I came to Kentucky in 1928 without knowing a single soul in this state. I got off the train down here on September the 14th, 1928, with 25,000 Kentucky Republicans milling around. I had never seen a Republican who wasn't a postmaster until I rode in the seat from Ashland down here with Charlie Curtis, who was running for vice president on the Hoover ticket. I came here as a student at the University of Kentucky. I was a graduate of the University of Mississippi, and I started work on my master's thesis in the field of Kentucky history, writing on the subject of trade in slaves, livestock, and hemp between this area and the lower South. And I became very much interested in the history of the state from that. And there's scarcely a day gone by in the last 60 years that somewhere or other I haven't been involved in doing something about the history of the state.
We also understand that you've written 20-plus books. Can you tell us what some of the books are about?
Well, I've published a history of Kentucky, the Exploring Kentucky, which was used a long time in the schools. I published the Kentucky in the Rivers of America series, the Rampaging Frontier, Frontier America, the Emerging South, Pills, Petticoats, and Plows, Southern Country Editor, and I've just published The Greening of the South, which has to do with reforestation and conservation of the southern land.
We were talking earlier about the changes that have been made. And when we've interviewed other people, we've asked them what changes they've seen take place. Can you tell us a little bit about the changes you've observed since you've been in Kentucky?
In the state or in the county?
In the state.
Oh, yes. Phenomenal changes. Despite all of the discussion of the educational system and the low standing in many categories of educational effort, I've seen phenomenal changes in educational endeavor. I think I've seen, although I'm no longer in the classroom, I think a much better prepared student is coming to college and universities now than in the old days. I've seen the family farm virtually on the way to disappearance. Who would have thought in 1928 that the great tobacco industry in the state would be threatened as it has been? You would be very remiss not to observe that Kentucky has made phenomenal progress in breaking the barrier of isolation, in building its highway system, and going into every part of the state. In the Clements administration, that legislation from building farm-to-market roads, building the interstate highway system, and then, of course, supplemented by the toll road system in the state, and made marked changes in Kentucky. I've also seen Kentucky fail to meet its challenges, fail to come up with what it's possible for it to do. Kentucky is still a provincial agrarian state trying desperately to just kind of ease into the 21st century, very poorly prepared to do so.
What do you think about what John's doing?
I think it's very interesting indeed. To go into all 120 counties in this state is a monumental undertaking. And he's gathered up a contemporary vignette look at the state that 50 years from now, people will turn back to these tapes and see that old historian in Lexington and all these people around the courthouses in 119 other counties and say, good God, is that where we were at that time? No, I think it's creating a very nice, interesting, and useful historical document.
I just wanted to come over here for a second to heap a little praise. It's not necessary, but I'm going to do it for this gentleman, Dr. Thomas Clark, because not only did he teach there at the University of Kentucky when I went there to UK, and I had Dr. Charles Talbert for Kentucky history, but I used your book when I taught American history in high school and Kentucky history in high school. And it was a great deal of honor that I did so. You know, I look back over my history myself, and I had people like Mrs. Hinsdale for a history teacher in the 8th grade, and you remember those people that make a mark on your life. And Dr. Clark, you've made a mark on many people's lives here in Kentucky and across the United States and world, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You spoke of a very fine historian in Charlie Talbot. Charlie was very precise and exacting. His book on Benjamin Logan is an excellent book. He also had a very fine volume on the history of the later years of the University of Kentucky. He was an excellent teacher, as the people in northern Kentucky will tell you.
Absolutely. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, sir. It's nice being here with you, and good luck, John.
Thank you so much.
And good luck,
Thank you.
lady manager.
I'm John Stevenson. June Guyman and I, along with Kentucky's historians, are proud to give you the history of the 6th Congressional District. Lawrenceburg, the county seat of Anderson County. Anderson County's population is 13,492. The area square miles is 204, which ranks 99th. Anderson County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Jim Catlett, County Judge Executive.
Lucille Duncan, Circuit Court Clerk.
And Jerry Edward Russell, Anderson County Clerk.
When was the county originally formed? How was it formed, and who was it named after?
It was formed in 1811, and it was called Franklin County then, and then they made it Anderson County in 1827, and that was Mr. Anderson was the man it was named after.
Okay. A little information about the courthouse itself. I mean, this is a beautiful structure. There was a question I wanted to ask about the tower, the clock tower.
According to the records, this is the first self-winding clock that was manufactured in the United States that you see now, and it was the first one that type that was made in Anderson in the United States.
As far as tourism goes, something we're trying to do is promote tourism for each county, in addition to collecting some historical information. If someone was going to drive through your county, what would you suggest they stop in and see?
Well, I would say that our industries here are bourbon whiskey. You know, we do make bourbon, and we have 2 distilleries active at this time, which we've had several over the years, but the ones that are active now, I'd say, are Wild Turkey over on Kentucky River as you come out of Woodford into Anderson, and over out on 513 they still have Seagrams. I believe they make, I really don't know, but I don't know the brand names, but they do run and they make a whiskey, and I think it's Maker's Mark.
The first courthouse was built in 1816 and was used until 1903. In May of 1827, the commissioners were directed to draw plans for a courthouse and by fall 1829, a small 2-story brick structure costing approximately $3,000 was ready. The first court held in the building was held in October 1829, though the building was not fully complete until July of 1830. The building was partially paid for by population subscription, some 50 or 60 citizens giving from $5 to $50 each. Some men donated labor, and one gave 36 gallons of whiskey, supposedly for personal use by the laborers. There were two two-room, one-story frame buildings on Main Street which were used as offices for the county attorney, sheriff, and lawyers. And then the first courthouse was destroyed by fire about midnight, October 26, 1859. Then in I believe it was 1905, it was remodeled. We had another fire on April 13, 1915. And the damage was estimated as high as 50,000. The front columns erected in 1860 were deemed unsafe and were torn down. Until a new building could be erected, the court made it the Masonic building on Main Street. So going back to the clock installed in the new building in 1916 is said to be the first self-winding tower clock built in America.
Great.
So that's the same one that we have now, the one that was built in 1960.
That's great.
And it was made up out of Franklin, Mercer, and Washington counties. It was made up out of those three counties when it was formed.
And speaking of the distilleries that first were established here, we had beautiful homes. Each one that built a distillery tried to outdo the other one building a home. So many of our South Main homes were Rippey and Dowling homes, and a lot of those are still standing and beautiful to see in the fall when the trees are yellow and reds, and all the beautiful homes on South Main Street.
What bodies of water are around here? Is there any boating or fishing?
We have we border Kentucky River is on the east side, and then we have Salt River that runs all the way through the county, and it is now presently dammed up at Taylorsville, and we have a Taylorsville Lake is out of our river, and we have about 300 acres of that in Anderson County, in the western end of the county.
Yeah. And also we have Beaver Lake. I don't know how much area that covers, but also have Beaver Lake, 156 acres of what they call Beaver Lake. So we have two fine lakes in our county.
Paris, county seat of Bourbon County. Bourbon County population, 19,273. Area square miles, 292. Rank, 67. Bourbon County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Across the street is Bourbon County Courthouse. The county seat is Paris, Kentucky. And with me, we have Miss Susan Hinkle, who has been kind enough to come visit with us and answer a few questions about the history of the county of Bourbon. Ms. Hinkle, what can you tell us about the formation of the county?
Well, I tell you, it is, you see, originally there were 3 counties in Kentucky, and then Bourbon came off of Fayette, and it included the rest of eastern Kentucky, really, up to the Ohio, and down to Tennessee, the line there, Cumberland. So it was a tremendous thing, and then gradually all the little counties came off of Bourbon. So it was really, it was either the 4th or the 5th county, I'm not sure. It seems like it was, I suppose, the 4th, maybe.
How did it get its name?
Oh, well, at that time, the people here were very sympathetic with the French, and they liked the name Bourbon, which was the ruling house of France at that time, and it was from that. Paris, you see, is the name of the town, which originally was called Hopewell when it was part of Virginia. But then the French influence, a lot of the crops and things that the farmers raised would go down the Mississippi to New Orleans. So there was quite a Frenchy tie. All of the people liked the French, not more than the English, but that was the reason. Then Lafayette had been here. That was quite a thing. You know, he was up at Duncan Tavern here, along with all the famous people who came to Paris would go to Duncan Tavern. So that was kind of how the name. And then, of course, bourbon whiskey, you see, we say originated here. Scott County claims it, but they're not right.
Okay.
So, and then the name, of course, Bourbon, it sounds much better than Scott. That would be like Scotch.
Okay, what can you tell us about this courthouse? How many courthouses has Bourbon County had?
Well, this is the fourth, really. Now, it's the third on that site. The other two burned. And this one, I think, was built about 1907. I'm not sure. But it's really quite a handsome thing. And we're very proud of it. It has some nice murals of the industry that was here, tobacco, horses, and in the past, bluegrass, but there's none here at all now. And that's all moved out west. So it's really quite a handsome building, though, and we're very proud of it.
Would you say that your major industries now are horsing and tobacco?
It's still agricultural primarily. Now we've got two little factories here. I never know exactly what they make, but we do have some. And of course there's another one coming in, kind of a satellite from Toyota. It will do parts for cars, I think, but that is just in the first stages. It's just being, the site has been picked, and that's about it. Okay. But it's still primarily agricultural.
Okay. If someone was going to drive through your county, what would they need to see?
Well, of course, Claiborne that's what most people come to see, because they have so many famous horses out there. Secretariat, everybody wants to see him, and Nijinsky too. I don't know, there's just a whole list of very famous horses. If you know anything about racehorses at all, half of them probably would be at Claiborne, and it is a tremendous, I guess it's the biggest employer maybe in the county. And they're very nice. They have a schedule that you have to follow. There are times when you can be taken through, and there are times when you can't. But that's the way most of the racehorse farms are now. They have to have times when you can't go in,
Mm-hmm. We've seen some very scenic roads with many, many horse farms, gorgeous farms.
There's some lovely farms around here, and Bourbon really has some of the oldest, like log houses. Half of them are falling in, but they're very fascinating. Over there is Duncan Tavern, which is another one of our famous sites, I suppose you would say. It was built about 1788, I think, by Major Duncan, whom I think came here after the Revolution, and then it was a tavern and a boarding house, and then became rather decrepit. And in the 1940s, the DARs, the Daughters of the Revolution, took it over and renovated it, and now it's really an exquisite place with gorgeous furniture in keeping with the period and all kinds of goodies, and people do like to go there and visit it. And then, of course, there's Cane Ridge Church. That was the beginning of the Christian church, the sect. Now it's the Disciples of Christ. And it's out in Bourbon, an old log structure that's covered over now, but it brings in thousands of people, really. Anyone who belongs to the Christian church, it's kind of a mecca that they come and see where it was founded, really, So we don't have a lot of famous things in Bourbon, but it's a lovely county, and really there's so many old homes here, some in disrepair, falling down, but there are other lovely homes that maybe have been in the family for generations and generations. Well, this is a publication of a survey by the Kentucky Heritage Council and our historic society here in Bourbon. It's called Historic Parish, Bourbon County. And we had it published. And it has all the old houses in the county. And it's really quite an outstanding book, and we're very proud of it. And I think it's, of all of the published surveys, this is the best one.
That one of the proudest times of my life was when I lived here in Bourbon County in Paris with my Uncle Bill and Aunt Erminy. Bless their dear souls, they're gone now. We're lost in an automobile accident. But I know the Binghams love this area. They weren't born and raised here, but they moved here out of choice. And living here and in Fayette County and in central Kentucky was one of the proudest and most enjoyable times of my life. And I was glad to be a part of your community.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you for saying
and
that.
And I appreciate you staying out here in the cold.
Oh, we are free.
Danville, the county seat of Boyle County. Boyle County population, 25,357. Area square miles, 182. Rank, 111. Boyle County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
We're in Danville, Kentucky, which is the county seat for Boyle County. We're standing across the street from the Boyle County Courthouse. To my right, we have gentleman Dr. Richard Brown, who has graciously volunteered to provide us with information about the county. Dr. Brown, one of the questions we wanted to ask was, when was the county formed, and was it formed from any other counties?
Yes, Boyle County was organized in 1842, and it was made up of parts of Mercer County to the north here and Lincoln County to the south, two of the oldest counties in Kentucky, but Boyle really is one of the newer counties, even though it was organized in 1842. It's also one of the smallest counties in Kentucky. There are only 9 counties in Kentucky that are actually smaller than Boyle. So when they organized it, they took parts of county to make one little county out of 2 much bigger counties, June.
Okay. Boyle County. Who is that name? Why is the name Boyle County?
Yeah. Boyle County is named for Judge John Boyle, who was a leading judge and jurist in early 19th century Kentucky. He owned some land here in Boyle County, and for that reason they named it for him.
Okay. What can you tell us about the courthouse? How old is this courthouse, and were there other courthouses that existed?
Oh yes, June. Actually, this is the 3rd courthouse in Boyle County. The first courthouse was 2 blocks to the east here, down on Constitutional Square, where the first Constitution of Kentucky was written. Then there was another courthouse built at the time Boyle became a county in 1842, and that one burned in a very disastrous fire that burned almost 1/3 of Danville on Washington's birthday, 1860. It also burned all but the walls of this Episcopal church, which we're standing in front of here. The new, what really is over 100 years old, but we call it the new courthouse. The new courthouse began to be built right after the disastrous fire in 1860. But then after the Battle of Perryville, which took place about 10 miles west of here, the Civil War Battle of Perryville, most of the public buildings around here were used as hospitals for sick and wounded soldiers of both sides. And for that reason, the county officials couldn't get back in the courthouse until the Civil War was almost over, really. It was occupied by hospital personnel and the sick and wounded.
Okay. We're trying to promote tourism in each county. What would you say are some points of interest here in the county?
Well, one of the points of interest I've already mentioned, of course, is Constitution Square State Shrine, a state park, which is 2 blocks to the east of us here, and this has 5 reconstructed buildings which are related to the very early history of Kentucky. One of the buildings is a replica of the building in which the conventions met that eventually drew up the first Constitution for the state of Kentucky in 1792. And across the street from Constitution Park is Ephraim McDowell House, where Dr. Ephraim McDowell performed abdominal surgery on a Mrs. Crawford, and became a pioneer in that type of surgery. So both those are right in the center of town. In addition to that, I mentioned the Battle of Perryville. It's in Boyle County, or that site is in Boyle County. It's to the west of us here, just outside the old town of Perryville. Many people come there to see that. As a matter of fact, they have a recreation of the battlefield, of the battle, every October. And this year is sort of an anniversary, the 25th or 125th anniversary of the Battle of Perryville. So they're anticipating a much larger crowd even than usual at this recreation. Danville has many fine old houses which are very attractive to people. People just like to drive up and down Maple Avenue, and some of the areas of town are historic districts on the National Heritage Foundation sites. So Danville has a great many. It's a pleasant town. It's a nice place to visit. Center College, which is an old liberal arts college, established first of all by the Presbyterian Church, but now obviously open to any denomination. Very well known throughout Kentucky, indeed throughout the whole United States. This is also the home of the Kentucky School for the Deaf, which was the first state-supported institution for people with handicaps, hearing handicaps in this case. Danville was quite an educational center, still is. There were a number of girls' schools here, started here. Kentucky eventually became the Kentucky School for Women, is now part of Center College. There was a theological institute here, founded in 1853. So Danville has a long history and a good reputation as a home of educational institutions.
Okay. We understand that you're not a native per se from Kentucky. Where did you originally come from, and what did you do?
Well, actually, I was born in a little town in southeastern Ohio, so I'm familiar with Kentucky over in the Appalachian part of Ohio. But I spent most of my adult life and most of my teaching career in western New York. I taught in the State University of New York College at Buffalo, New York. And they had the great blizzard of 1977 there, in which that part of western New York got 199 inches of snow during that year. And this started us thinking about some place that had a little more congenial climate. We were already familiar with central Kentucky. We'd been down to Lexington and Berea, areas such as that. We liked to go to Keeneland Racetrack in the spring, and so when it came time to move, we started looking around for actually a smaller town close to Lexington. Lexington had grown to be a city of a couple 100,000 people by that time, and we shopped around and did some research and chose Danville because of its medical facilities. Its fact that Center College is here, and we haven't been sorry. It's a delightful town, and when friends come to visit us, they pat us on the back for having made a wise choice, and that delights us, of course.
What are the major industries in the county here?
Danville has a number of industries. Tom McCann has a distribution center here. Whirlpool is recently moved most of its engineering staff to Danville. Rexnord is an important industry. Tokyo rope is an important industry. Donnelly, the big printing firm, recently established a plant here. So those are only 5 or so of the more than 15 or 20 industries that have branch plants or distribution centers. American Greetings card has a distribution center here. So Danville is well represented by both industries. It's a significant agricultural area. Burley tobacco is grown here. A lot of beef cattle grown here. Farmers here who are plagued by the question of raising tobacco are shifting their agricultural efforts into raising tomatoes, green peppers, bell peppers, and so on. But Danville and Boyle County has a very diversified economy. It doesn't really depend on one crop or one industry like so many counties have to do.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Brown, as a historian, what is your opinion of what Mr. Stevenson's doing with this documentation, taping for high school kids?
As a historian, of course, I'm always interested in any means of putting particularly local history before the eyes and into the ears of young people, or all people of all ages for that matter. And so often people in Kentucky know only the local history of their own particular area. I know I was that way when I came here. I still don't know where all these counties are, and I think the idea of visiting 120 different counties and taking pictures of their courthouse and getting some of the local history on tape and is an excellent idea, and I think you and Mr. Stevenson should be congratulated for.
Brooksville, the county seat of Bracken County. Bracken County population, 7,583. Area square miles, 203. Rank 100th. Bracken County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Behind us we have the Bracken County Courthouse. County seat is Brooksville, Kentucky. To my right we have Mr. Tony Johnson, who is a resident here in town, also a history teacher. Correct? Okay, Tony, what can you tell us about the formation of Bracken County?
Bracken County was formed in 1787 and was developed out of parts of Campbell County and Mason County. And it was named after William Bracken, who arrived in the area in 1773. And he was a well-known Indian fighter and hunter of the area. And it's also named after a very popular fern that grows along the creek banks in this area.
Okay. The county seat, or the courthouse itself, this obviously isn't the original courthouse, but what can you tell us about this one and perhaps other ones?
The first courthouse was in Augusta, Kentucky, and it developed out of a land grant to Augusta by Captain Philip Buckner, and it existed in Augusta until 1839. 1839 was a period of time where it moved a couple times and ended up in a place called Woodward's Crossroad, which is now present-day Brooksville. And this is the second courthouse in Brooksville. The first courthouse, the original one, was condemned in 1913, and the new one was dedicated in 1915.
Could you share with us what you shared with me earlier about some things that took place here in the 1800s?
Well, Bracken County has a very little known history about wine production. In 1870, Bracken County was a leading county in the nation in wine production, and we produced over 30,000 gallons of wine annually, which accounted for over half of the production of wine in the entire United States. And also in 1867, white burley was brought into Bracken County, raised and marketed for the first time near Augusta, Kentucky. And this is the forerunner of the modern-day burley tobacco, which is very important to our state.
Do you know why wine production stopped?
Well, it's only speculation, but I believe a little bit better wine-producing areas developed, plus the fact that the German influence started to dwindle during that period of time.
Okay. What is the major industries in Bracken County?
Definitely farming, and you have F.A. Niter Company and Clopay in Augusta, but farming overall is the major industry.
Okay. Do you know what the population is of the county?
Roughly 7,000.
7,000. Okay. Something we're trying to do is promote tourism, and some counties have a lot to offer, some counties don't, and they want something in their area. What's the situation with Bracken?
Well, presently, Augusta, Kentucky has did a lot as far as restoring the row houses and many of the original homes in Augusta. And they do offer tours and a Heritage Day celebration, which people can come and tour the various houses in the area.
Tony, where do you teach?
I teach at Taylor. It's elementary school, junior high here in the county.
Okay. Tony, what do you think about Mr. Stevenson's project of taping all the courthouses for school education purposes?
I think it's a great idea. I know as a history teacher, there's been many times I would like to know a lot of the more important details about the counties and have a chance for the children of Kentucky to see the various county seats and courthouses. And I'm sure that there's not a history teacher in the state that will not find this beneficial.
Yes, I'm Tom Stevenson, a county extension agent for 4-H. Been here about 20 years.
Okay, what does an extension agent do?
As a 4-H extension agent, I work with the youth programs. We have about 400 active 4-Hers in clubs that meet regularly monthly, and 4-H has the philosophy of learning by doing and hands-on kinds of learning experience. And Bracken County is a rural county, predominantly agriculture, and so our 4-H youth program deals with subject matter relating to agriculture. We have an outstanding livestock program here. We're conditioning and grooming and fitting 54 steers and about 30 lambs and a dozen hogs or so for the Germantown Fair that comes up the first week in August.
Okay. This is my question. What does 4-H stand for? What are the 4-H's? Is that something symbolic?
Yes, 4-H started back in about 1914. Probably started here in Bracken County in the in the 20s, the 1920s. 4-H stands for head, hands, heart, and health. The 4-H's, and the colors are green and white, and the motto is learning by doing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us what your role here is in Bracken County?
My name is Dwayne Paget, Judge Executive of Bracken County. My main job is administrator of the county, make out the budget. We have 2 court meetings each month, and I try to do the best I can for the county. It's a rural county, like Tom says. We don't have any industries much in the county. I have a couple in Augusta, and I try to put in my time the best I can to help Bracken County move forward.
Winchester, the county seat of Clark County. Clark County population, 29,046. Area square miles, 255. Rank, 82nd. Clark County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Well, my name is Jack K. Hodgkin, and I have been president of the Clark County Historical Society.
Okay. What can you tell us about the county? When was the county formed?
Well, Clark County was one of the first counties formed the year Kentucky became a state. Became a state in 1792 in June, and latter part of the year in December, that's when Clark County became the 13th county.
Okay. How did it get the name Clark?
Well, General George Rogers Clark was a Revolutionary War hero, and also later in the Battle of 1812, he was very prominent in that, and of course we named it before the Battle of 1812, but it was named after George Rogers Clark.
Okay. What's the population in Winchester?
Well, we're getting close to around 20,000 right now. Winchester's grown since I've been here 50 years, around 10,000 when I was born, and maybe dropped down, and now it's back to up about 20,000.
Okay. Before I go on to some questions about industry, the courthouse itself, when was it built?
Well,
a ballpark figure.
Okay, there was, this is the original site of the first courthouse. John Baker is the one that owned this property here where Winchester stands, and he gave 66 acres right after the county was formed in '92. That following spring, Winchester was named after Winchester, Virginia, his hometown. He lived next door to George Washington there. But he gave the site for the courthouse and the 66 acres, and they built a log building and then maybe another brick structure or two. And this present building was built in around 1850s, and later was added on to, the back wing was added on to, remodeled in 1938. And here 4 or 5 years ago we put another section on this south side, which enlarged the courthouse to its present size.
What's the major industries in the county?
Well, we have several industries, I guess Rockwell International and the GTE Corporation, Bundy Tubing. Those are some of our, Hart Schaefer Marx is here now. They've been here several years.
How is farming?
Well, farming, because of the tobacco business, has always been good here. Of course, the tobacco business was off this year, and but it's still hanging in there. That's the main crop, of course, tobacco.
Okay. Earlier, we were talking about activities and events going on in each county, and we're trying to help and promote tourism for each county. And you were talking earlier about a festival. You want to tell us about that?
Well, sure. We're real interested in tourism and then promoting the historical part that Clark County plays. Because of Daniel Boone built the fort right here on the edge of this county on the Kentucky River down there. And so we named our festival the Daniel Boone Pioneer Festival, which is held every Labor Day. And that's enlarged. The R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company have been donating money to that, and I've put on a concert each year for them. And this will be the 4th year that they've been involved. And the first few years we had Tom T. Hall, Boots Randolph, Porter Wagner, and we'll have another name star this year. There's balloon races, and it's a very good festival. It's one of the best festivals in the state, Kentucky, Labor Day. So we want people to come and visit us during that time. Oh yeah, we had, well, I mentioned Daniel Boone, of course, and George Rogers Clark because of the Fort Boonesboro, which was the start of the whole westward movement right here in this particular land we're on. Andrew Jackson came through here on his way to be inaugurated for president. He was supposed to have stopped down here and made a speech about where that old hotel was. And also Henry Clay was over here quite a bit. He was supposed to have made his first speech on that location by a stump, and his last speech was in the courthouse here, Henry Clay. And I found an old picture not too long ago after they built the railroad station, which has been torn down here a few years ago. We hated that, but Teddy Roosevelt, got a picture of him making a speech out in front of the train station just before he became president. Harry Truman was the last president to come through here in a railroad car. Oh, the most active project going on right now is the old Eads Theater building up here, which they were closing up the theater, and so several of the people here in this community have the Council for the Arts, and they are raising money, and they've gotten $250,000 raised right now to buy the building and to redo it and make it a performing arts center. It'll be $1 million project. Looks like it's going over.
Lexington, the county seat of Fayette County. Fayette County population, 212,068. Area square miles, 285. Fayette County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Mr. Cooper, what do you do in Lexington?
I'm the curator of modern political manuscripts at the University of Kentucky Library, and also teach a course each semester in Kentucky history.
Okay. What can you tell us about the formation of Fayette County?
Well, This place was actually named before it was settled. In the spring of 1775, a group of explorers and hunters from Pennsylvania camped nearby here. While they were here, they received word of the Battle of Lexington in Massachusetts in the American Revolution. So they decided that this place should be named Lexington. It wasn't until 4 years later that there is actually what you would call a permanent settlement here. In April of 1779, Robert Patterson, who was an ensign in the militia at Fort Harrod, was ordered by the Virginia government to bring 25 people and establish an outpost or a garrison somewhere north of the Kentucky River. They selected this site. As a matter of fact, erected the first blockhouse and later a fort just down the street here from us at the corner of what is now Mill and Main. And that was the permanent origins of Lexington.
Okay. What can you tell us about the courthouse itself?
It was patterned somewhat after the earlier forts that had been built in Kentucky already, some of which have been reconstructed, the one at Fort Harrod, the one at Boonesboro, and so forth. In the very beginning, because of Indian problems and so forth, most of the inhabitants lived within the stockade, although that would quickly change and dwellings would begin to be built around the perimeter.
Okay. What other historical pieces could you share with us about historical figures of the past?
If I could deter you a moment, I should have mentioned really in talking about the formation of Lexington that the town is actually formed before the county. It was not until 1780, the next year after the founding of Lexington, that Fayette County was established. And that originally, well, since 1776, all of what we now know as Kentucky, with the exception of the Jackson Purchase, which was added later, was Kentucky County, a one-county unit for administrative purposes of Virginia. In 1780, the Virginia Assembly divided Kentucky into 3 counties, Fayette, Lincoln, and Jefferson. Fayette at that time encompassed about 1/3 of what is now the entire state, everything north and east of the Kentucky River. And the county was named Fayette after the Marquis de Lafayette, who was the most influential and dedicated French supporter of the Americans in the Revolution. Of course, you have the ones which are well known, like Henry Clay, who spent 50 years in political service in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate as Secretary of State, was a candidate for president 3 times. You have people like John Breckinridge, whose statue stands across the way. He was vice president under President Buchanan, then a candidate for president in 1860 on the Southern Democratic ticket. But some of the more interesting people are really some of the lesser known, I think. People like John McKinney, who was a school teacher on this site where the courthouse is now, as early as 1783. There's a little marker over there, I think, indicating there was a schoolhouse there. McKinney is probably better known as Wildcat McKinney, because sometime in the 1780s, when he was getting ready to open school for the day, a wildcat came in the door of his schoolroom and attacked him. And he proceeded to wrestle with the wildcat and strangled it. And when help finally arrived, the wildcat was dead, but its claws and teeth were still embedded in McKinney. And the story is, and I'm sure it may be apocryphal, but the story is that McKinney was so shaken by the incident that he decided to dismiss school for that day. There are people like Constantine Rafinesque, who's well known among scientists, but not among the general public, who was a professor of natural sciences at Transylvania University. A very eccentric individual, but one who contributed immensely to the botanical and the zoological information at that time. A fellow who, for instance, proposed to build a botanical garden and an arboretum in Lexington in the 1820s. The exact same thing that the city and the University of Kentucky are now proposing to do much later. He eventually left Transylvania under a cloud. There was a lot of probably professional jealousy among his colleagues, plus the fact that he didn't attend his own classes very well. He would go off on field trips and be gone for 6 weeks at a time. I'm sure the students at Transylvania loved it, but the administration didn't take it very kindly. And he eventually left and supposedly put a cloud or a curse on Transylvania University. Someone many years later, after Rafinesque had been dead for a long time, found that he'd been buried in Philadelphia, and they thought it would be a good idea to disinter the body, bring it back, and he's now buried in the basement of Transylvania, or of Morrison Hall out of Transylvania. And there's the legend that every Halloween, or maybe on his birthday, I'm not sure which, but some brave students will volunteer to spend the night over the crypt so that Rafinesque can't escape and destroy the university. People like that, I think, are maybe not as important in the total picture, but certainly a lot more interesting. King Solomon, who was a hopeless derelict and the town drunk, but who, when in 1833 a very serious cholera epidemic struck Lexington, 300 people died in 2 weeks, including 3 doctors who were trying to treat it. There weren't enough people to dig graves, to dispose of the bodies. People who could wouldn't, because they feared contacting the disease. King Solomon dug graves almost around the clock. And he survived the epidemic. He never contacted cholera. Many years later, a fine tombstone was erected to him in the Lexington Cemetery because of his services. People like that, I think, make every county and city of this size are going to have their fair share of prominent people. People are well known. But I think it's the thing that makes Lexington and Fayette County's history so rich, the fact that they have a lot of characters like the ones that I've just mentioned, who after all were common individuals, but who made the community and the society more unique. That tourism, of course, is one of our major industries here. I probably should have mentioned that when we were talking about the economy. To start right here in Lexington, within easy walking distance, you can absorb some of the magnificent history of the town and of the county. You can get an interesting contrast between the new and the old. For instance, we're standing here by the newest building, the Bank of Lexington. 2 blocks north of here is Gratz Park, which at one time was a part of the Transylvania University campus. Benjamin Gratz gave that lot to the college. In fact, it was originally called the Little College Lot. But around that, the perimeter of Gratz Park there are magnificent examples of antebellum architecture in homes, both the Federal and the Georgian style. You have the Hunt Morgan House, you have the Bodley House, which served as the headquarters of the Union Army during the Civil War when they occupied Lexington. You have the Gratz home. Benjamin Gratz was one of the early residents of Lexington. In fact, I believe the first millionaire in Kentucky. He came from Philadelphia, was a merchant. Further on, Transylvania University, founded in 1780, the oldest college west of the Allegheny Mountains. And on the Transylvania campus, there is the Robert Patterson Cabin, the fellow we spoke of who founded Lexington. We have there at one time, Transylvania had one of the finest medical schools in the country. As a matter of fact, they for a while had more students than Harvard Medical School. And they have in the library at Transylvania much of the old medical school library and the medical apparatus and equipment which they used in the school. Morrison Hall on the Transylvania University campus is an interesting historical building. It was built in the 1820s by Gideon Shyrock, who was one of the leading architects and who introduced the Greek Revival style into Kentucky. And it's interesting to note that for his services as an architect, he was paid in land. Transylvania University owned some land, I think, in what is now Franklin County, which they paid him for his services. And when the building was finished, he gave the college a guarantee for 17 years, and the building is done considerably better than that. But the whole area north of the downtown, around Gratz Park, on North Broadway, and in the other direction south of downtown on South Mill and Upper Street, is shrouded in history. Fortunately, there has been a strong historic commission, the Bluegrass Trust, which have been involved in saving historic structures. They haven't saved them all. They haven't saved a lot of them that they would have liked to. But I think it's been a decent compromise between the old and the new, and we have preserved some of our history here, which I think is fortunate.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to say yourself about Fayette County?
Well, of course, there are outside of Lexington, there are a number of things that are of interest. Not far south of here is Walnut Hill Presbyterian Church, which is the oldest Presbyterian church still standing in the state. It was built in 1801. While we're talking about churches, one thing which interests me, in Lexington, you have two black churches that were established in 1790. Now, I'm talking about all black churches established in 1790, which made them the fifth and sixth oldest black churches in the entire United States. And those are churches that are still in existence. Pleasant Green, which is now in West Maxwell, and the First African Baptist, which is down this way, I believe, on the corner of Short and DeWeese. At one time, about 1850, the First African Baptist was the largest church in Kentucky, black or white. It was pastored by a man named Landon Farrell, who was a free black. And they had 1,800 members in 1850, largest church in the state. Of course, for people who are interested in horses, and that's a large part of the tourism, we have the horse park north between here and Georgetown, which depicts the entire history of the horse. We have many horse farms. You can go in any direction and see horse farms, some of which are open to the public. We have Keeneland Racetrack, which is really, I think, unique among racetracks in America. For the trotting fans, there's Red Mile here within the city. This area has always been very steeped in racing. In fact, the original racetrack in Lexington was down Broadway, which at that time was just a hardened piece of earth which had been trampled down by the buffaloes going back and forth, the old buffalo trace between here and the Salt Licks up at Maysville, near Maysville. And very shortly after settlement, they were having horse races on that course. The Ashland, of course, Henry Clay's home, which doesn't look today as it originally did. It was rebuilt in the 1850s after Clay died, but that's a major tourist attraction. And I'm sure there are many others which I slip my mind now, but those are some of them I think they're worth seeing. For those who are of a more modern bent, athletics, very rich in tradition, of course. Rupp Arena right down the way here, Memorial Coliseum out on the university campus where some of the great Adolph Rupp teams played. And for those who like the new things, we have those too, with the new festival market here and Triangle Park and the Victorian Square shops, which are new but which are in an old preserved block of buildings, which makes it somewhat unique and interesting. This is the fifth courthouse of Fayette County, the fourth one on this exact same site. Now the first courthouse was constructed in 1782. It was a two-story log structure which sat at the corner of Broadway and Main. There's some discrepancy. Some sources say it was at the northwest corner, some say at the northeast corner. But at any rate, it was in that general area. By 1888, however, the county had grown to the point where they needed a bigger courthouse, and they moved to the present site, and a two-story stone building was erected. I've forgotten the exact dates, but that did not last for a great many years until it was replaced by a three-story brick structure. I believe about 1806 is when that courthouse was built. That was the third one. That remained until the 1880s. And then it was replaced by a larger stone structure, which did not look a great deal unlike the one we have today. That courthouse, the fourth one, lasted only 12 or 13 years. It was destroyed by fire. One of the custodians was climbing up to the belfry to wind the clock and dropped a match or a candle or something, and the courthouse, much of it was made of wood, and it burned. A new courthouse then was constructed from 1898 to 1900. And in 1900, this courthouse, the fifth one, was opened. It was designed by architects from Cleveland, Ohio, Lehman and Schmidt. It was built by a couple of local builders, a man named Albert Howard and another named George Clark. And when it opened in 1900, it was considered certainly the most magnificent structure in the state, and some people like to believe in the entire country. It was built at a cost of a little more than $250,000, and that was the late 1800s, 1900. It had the interior was absolutely magnificent, we're told. And there are descriptions of it which exist. Unfortunately, in the 1960s, it was necessary to remodel the courthouse to make the space more efficient, to add more offices, and much of the space inside the courthouse, which made it such an imposing structure, was lost. The Y-shaped staircases which went to the upper floors with marble steps, the ornate railings. There was a rotunda in it originally which was 105 feet tall, almost went to the top of the building. All of that was closed off in the remodeling, so as a result we get a courthouse today which looks very similar on the exterior, but on the interior in no way resembles what we once had.
Frankfort, the county seat of Franklin County. Franklin County population, 43,888. Area square miles, 212. Rank 95th. Franklin County is located in the 6th Congressional District and is the capital of our state government.
We're standing across the street from the Franklin County Courthouse. Frankfort is the county seat. And to my right, we have a gentleman whose name is John Gray. Mr. Gray, what can you tell us about the formation of Franklin County?
Well, Franklin County was formed in 1794 and was named for Benjamin Franklin. The city of Frankfort had been formed in 1786, so the county was actually formed afterwards. And behind us is the first courthouse of Franklin County. It was built by, or designed by, an architect named Gideon Skyark, who is a renowned Greek revivalist architect. He also did the old Capitol.
What can you tell us about the courthouse itself?
Well, the courthouse was built, like I said, in 1830, and the style is Greek Revival architecture, and it was one of the first examples of Greek Revival architecture west of the Alleghenies, and it's one of the oldest courthouses in Kentucky. And several counties had their courthouses burned during the Civil War, but Frankfort's was not. Even though Frankfort was occupied by the Confederates, it was the only state capital outside of the Deep South to be occupied by Confederate forces.
Okay. You know, just driving through town here, you see a lot of historical markers and yards, so obviously there's a lot of history here. What else can you tell us that you could share with us?
Well, I guess most people know that Daniel Boone is buried here in Frankfort Cemetery. Frankfort, because it is a state capital, is associated with state government, and all of the governors from the various parts of the states have resided here in Frankfort, and many of their houses are still here. Frankfort is rich in architecture, not only residential architecture, but commercial architecture too. The downtown here is on the historic register of National Register of Historic Places, and has many very interesting buildings that date back to before the 1800s.
Gosh. Let me ask you this question for those who may not know. Why was Frankfort chosen to be the capital city in Kentucky?
Well, Frankfort was chosen to be the capital city actually as sort of a compromise. Louisville and Lexington were the two of the cities that were vying for the state capital, and I think the legislature sort of decided on Frankfort partly as a compromise, and partly because Frankfort decided, the merchants of Frankfort and the business people of Frankfort made the legislature an offer as far as land and materials to build the Capitol building that sort of won the day, but more than anything else it was probably just a compromise choice. The major industries in Frankfort, there are several distilleries. Frankfort has always been a center of distilleries. It suffered some during the Depression, but several of the distilleries are still in operation. It has an industrial park, but it's mostly small industries, and I guess Frankfort's biggest industry probably is state government.
Okay. What about farming, horsing?
Well, Frankfort does have
the county.
Or Franklin County does have a very wide agricultural base. We don't have the large horse farms that they do in Woodford County and Scott County, or not Scott County, that they have in Fayette County, but Frankfort is primarily a tobacco, cattle, corn kind of a agricultural base.
Okay.
Well, when people come to Franklin County, I think that they will want to visit Frankfort because it is the state capital, and they'll be able to see the new Capitol building, the governor's mansion, the old Capitol building, the courthouse, the historic district down here where we are today. And also Frankfort has a residential area that's called the Corner and Celebrities that is 2 blocks from where we stand, that's very rich in residential architecture that people would find very interesting.
Cynthiana, the county seat of Harrison County. Harrison County population, 15,667. Area square miles, 310. Rank, 59th. Harrison County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
We're standing across the street from the Harrison County Courthouse. County seat is Cynthiana, Kentucky. To my left, we have Mr. Paul Lale. Mr. Lale, what can you tell us about the formation of Harrison County?
Well, it was a part of Virginia, originally called Fayette County, and then this part became Bourbon County, and eventually became Harrison County. It was settled in 1775, and those people were driven out by the Indians. The next year they came back and made a settlement, and they were never driven out after that. And that was the start of the settlement of this area of Kentucky. And it was Captain Ruddles. They were, the fort was captured and massacred in 1780. They came back in 1781 and 82, new groups, and they formed quite a strong county. Cynthiana was formed in 1793. They had their first court in 1795, and shortly after that, the county was formed. The first sheriff was one of the first people who was in Kentucky, John Hingston, and he was the first sheriff of the county. And many of the old names that are here now are still from the same people. They originally came from Pennsylvania and from North Carolina. Now my people came from Pennsylvania to North Carolina and then on into Kentucky. They were contemporaries of Boone. They lived next to Boone, Daniel Boone's place in Pennsylvania and in North Carolina, and then came here and later spread to the other states. We have many of the original people still represented here. It's always been a beautiful county. They say that this is the most beautiful part of Kentucky. Harrison County is the most beautiful part of Kentucky. It lies on the edge of the bluegrass, and we have surrounding hills. We have a long valley, narrow valley. We have Licking River flowing through it. At one time, we had commerce on the river. Now, of course, we don't have commerce on the river. We still have old buildings that were built here in the 1700s. My people's first house is owned by Joe B. Hall, a former basketball coach of Kentucky, and it's been lived in continuously since 1782 or 3. It's a log house. It's 36 feet long, and it's in excellent state of repair, and people are still living in it. Joe has it beautifully set up. He has a horse farm there now, and we have many brick places that were built. We have always tried to keep the history correct about them, and we're still correcting. We're working on a new history of this county. In town, we have a great number of old buildings that are, they're historical, on the historical list, and people just almost worship them. In the background, you may be able to see at one corner of the courthouse, there's a log cabin. And this has been a courthouse, it's been a library, it's been most everything you can think of. At the present time, it is a radio station. WCYN operates out of this log cabin, and it's in an excellent state of repair, and it's been used every day of over 200 years that it has lived here. And churches, we have our old churches that have been built way back when they started out with a log church, and then in just a few years they became brick churches and were replaced with, if they were replaced or rebuilt with stone and brick. They're old and they have quite a history. We're very proud of them. We're very proud of many of our buildings, and our industries have carried on. We've had great strides in industries. We at one time were the premier whiskey county. This county had 30 distilleries, and Bourbon County had 34, and we almost cornered the market. We had some of the most famous brands known at the time, and since Prohibition we've just had one distillery, but it made as much whiskey as the other small distilleries made all this time. We were one of the first areas to bring in shorthorn cattle. We brought in new breeds of sheep and hogs. We've been a very progressive county, and it showed up in our history and in our relations. And many people come here, and like I was born in Bourbon County and never felt at home till I came back down here when I was 19 years old because all my folks were here. But many people come here and they say that this is the most friendly spot they have ever been. And when people from our businesses, we have a great many businesses from out of state, from all over the country here, and when people from our businesses come here and then they're going to be transferred someplace else, they all leave regretfully. They all love it, everyone.
That says a lot, doesn't it? I have a question. Where did Harrison come from? How did it get its name, the county, and how did Cynthiana get its name?
Well, one of the early people who came here was Colonel Benjamin Harrison, and he came in here early, and then along in the late 70s, 1770s, and he came in, and when they formed the city, and then later the county, he was very active in this. And Colonel Harrison had this part of the Harrison County, which was bigger at that time than it is now. But the county was named after Colonel Benjamin Harrison, named in his honor. Right near to where the first fort was, there's a vault. Captain Matthias Lair built a vault out of a rock cliff, and this cliff was cut out, and this vault made back in it, and all of his people are buried there from back at that time. And when he got the vault completed and got his people in there and buried there, he went to where the site of the massacre was and gathered up all the bones where they'd been buried in a mass grave. And he gathered up the bones of approximately 40 or 50 people, and they are buried in there in some large caskets. Now these people are mostly buried in iron caskets. Vandals kept bothering the vault, so they did concrete across the front of it. But they have great big slabs, marble slabs, telling who all's in there. Of course, they don't know the 40 or 50 who were buried there. I have some great Uncle Peter that was buried there, but you don't really know for sure. But that's something of local interest, and a lot of people come in from other states. And within the last year, I've had people in from Texas, from California, from Nebraska, Missouri, Florida, Indiana, Ohio, and several people coming back to search for their roots here. And since I'm retired, I have plenty of time to go with them, and I really enjoy it. And I do a lot of work for people that are searching for their roots.
My name's Jack Keith, and I'm Commonwealth Attorney for the 18th Judicial Circuit, which includes 4 counties, Harrison, Pendleton, Robertson, and Nicholas counties. My office is here in Cynthiana, but I have prosecutorial responsibilities in all 4 counties for felony offenses. And I have the same judicial district as our circuit judge has, which is those 4 counties. And it's my responsibility to prosecute felonies in those 4 counties. After those cases either come out of the district court or we initiate prosecution through a direct submission to the grand juries.
What can you two tell us about Max Winford?
Judge Mack, Mr. Lael certainly remembers him and known him significantly longer than I had, but Judge Mack, as we knew him, practiced law here in a private, as a private attorney. Then during the Roosevelt administration went in as United States District Attorney for the Eastern District of Kentucky. In 1937 he went to the federal bench and became at that time the youngest federal judge in the United States. After he became the youngest federal judge in the United States, he died while still on the bench, although he was not as active as he had been. He essentially retired as the chief judge of the Eastern District. I think Judge Mack died about 1978, Paul, I think somewhere in there. I think. He wrote probably one of the most classic books in Kentucky called The Kentucky Lawyer. And it's a marvelous book on Kentucky lawyers and tales that he'd seen and incidences and funny stories about lawyers and courtroom experiences that he'd had. And it's still a classic and always will be a classic. Judge Mack was a brilliant man, a farmer, a fox hunter, and also a fine jurist, and extremely well respected in our community. Aside from that, he had his son John Swinford is a well-known practicing attorney here and an outstanding member of the Kentucky Bar, served in the General Assembly for several years and was majority floor leader in the Kentucky House of Representatives for a number of years, and as I said, still practices in the firm of Swinford and Sims that's still in existence here. And Judge Mack put a real stamp on our community, and as sort of one of our patriarchs that we all think a great deal of, and he never forgot his hometown. And I guess he, in Kipling's terms, he sat with kings, but he never lost the common touch, and he had a significant dignity as an individual, but he never forgot his folks at home, and that's one thing we'll always remember him for. Mr. Lale remembers him, I'm sure, more intimately than I would.
He also, I think, was the finest Sunday school teacher I ever listened to, and was well qualified to take the pulpit. He could bring a fine sermon. And he always had a little human touch, as Jack says. I know one time he gave a nice talk from a pulpit, but he forgot to take up a collection. And everybody started out, and he said, "Wait a minute, I have forgotten one thing. The most important part of this day is to me to give everybody a chance to contribute." Said, "We're going to place a hat."
Richmond, the county seat of Madison County. The Madison County population is 54,544. Area square miles, 443. Rank, 21st. Madison County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
We're standing across the street from the Madison County Courthouse. The county seat is Richmond, Kentucky. To my left, we have the gentleman whose name is Hank Everman, who has so graciously volunteered to come out in this cold weather today to give us some information historically related to the county of Madison. What can you tell us about the formation of Madison County?
Madison County was originally part of Virginia. It was the 5th county that was organized in Virginia in 1786. And then, of course, Kentucky did not become a state until 1792. The original courthouse was at a little village called Milford, which is about 4 miles south of here toward Berea, and it wasn't until 1798 that the justices on the court decided to move the courthouse to this location. And a very prominent farmer and political leader named John Miller owned the land on which you now see this courthouse behind us. There have been 3 courthouses on this square, but this one was constructed in 1849 at a cost of roughly $40,000. And of course it has held up very well. They have added 2 annexes on each side to it in recent years, but there's been a lot of history go through this courthouse behind us.
That's great. How did it get the name Madison County?
It was named after James Madison, who of course was not only one of the most prominent of all the Virginia legislators at the time, but later would be the father of the Constitution, and of course our 4th president. And Richmond itself took a name after Richmond, Virginia.
There's a lot of history in this county, and I know it'd be difficult to put it in capsule form, but could you briefly run over some of the things of major interest?
When most people think of Madison County, they think of the founding of Boonesboro in the summer of 1775, and it was certainly one of the most important forts on the Kentucky River. The great majority of settlers who came into Kentucky came by way of Boonesboro in the 1700s. We've had a lot of very famous history in this area, not only because of Boonesboro, but because of the famous Civil War battle, one of the few Confederate victories during the Civil War. One of the most prominent of the early leaders was Green Clay, who amassed a fortune, including some 200,000 acres of land, not only in present-day Madison County, but throughout central southern Kentucky and down into northern Tennessee. And Green Clay showed the potential to any Virginian or Carolinian who wanted to migrate into this area, because he opened warehouses. He had all types of farms, taverns, distilleries, ferries. He engaged in a number of business practices and often bought up land that there was no legal title to as far as the early settlers are concerned. He also was the father of Cassius Clay, the famed abolitionist, who lived a very colorful life here in Madison County and died out here at Whitehall, one of the most impressive of our Madison County antebellum homes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What we're trying to do is help each county promote some tourism. So what would be things of interest for people to see coming through Madison County?
Fort Boonesboro has been restructured and is a fine park out here. It does attract probably the greatest number of tourists of any single attraction in the county. Whitehall, the ancestral clay home, has been restored. It's one of the most magnificent antebellum homes. It's open to the public. I think a lot of people come here to the courthouse not only to view the courthouse but to do genealogical research. Bybee pottery is well known throughout the country, and we do export pottery throughout this country from the Bybee pottery, which was started in the 1840s. Berea is well known not only for its arts and crafts, but because of the college. It is a very special place, and it draws a great number of tourists annually.
Okay. As far as, let's say, locally in Richmond, for those who won't know this, could you tell us a little bit about the university here?
All right. Eastern, of course, originally was a Presbyterian college that was founded after the Civil War because of the split in the Presbyterian Church. It was called Old Central. And it was not until 1906 that it became a state teachers college. And then in 1966 it was declared a university during the presidency of Bob Martin. It has grown from a very small campus of 200 or 300 to an enrollment now of 13,000. Judy West has been appointed to the Court of Appeals. She is the first female judge appointed to that high post. She is a Richmond native, and we are very proud of her.
Harrodsburg, the county seat of Mercer County. Mercer County population, 19,052. Area square miles, 250. Rank, 85th. Mercer County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Mercer County was formed by the Virginia Act in 1785, before Kentucky became a state. It included most of the present Anderson, Boyle, and part of Franklin, Casey, and Garrett counties. Harrodsburg was the first permanent English settlement west of the Alleghenies, founded by James R. Harrod in 1774. Harrodsburg, seat of government of Kentucky County, 1776, Lincoln County, 1780, Mercer County, 1785. Mercer County was named for General Hugh Mercer, a native of Scotland. He came to America in about 1746, was an officer in the French and Indian War, 1775 to 1759, served with Washington, was the commander at Fort Pitt, hero in the Revolution, instrumental in success at Trenton, 1776, and Princeton, 1777, where he was banded to death by the Hessians. He owned 13,000 acres in Kentucky District.
Judge, what is your full name?
I.C. James III.
Judge, what can you tell us about tourism in your county?
Well, of course, Mercer County is noted for its tourist attractions. We have in this county, of course, the old fort, which was in memory of the founders of the first permanent settlement west of the Allegheny Mountains, Harrodsburg, Kentucky. Also, we have several, Pleasant Hill at Shakertown. We have the Beaumont Inn, several other noted eating places, and Mud Meeting House, First Church, and also Lincoln's Marriage Temple is here, and numerous other historical places.
What would you say the major industries are in Mercer County?
Well, of course, farming is one of the major industries. We have several factories here and would like to have more. We certainly want to see our people employed. And we'd like to see some more factories come into Harrodsburg and Mercer County. As you know, county governments as well as city governments are struggling due to the loss of the revenue sharing funds which have been available to the counties and cities. And we certainly need more cooperation with the state government and the counties to help us to get industry and be able to pay our way.
Mount Sterling, the county seat of Montgomery County. Montgomery County population, 20,538. Area square miles, 199. Rank, 102nd. Montgomery County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
To my right, we have Mr. Caswell Lane, who is an attorney here in town. What can you tell us about the formation of Montgomery County?
In 1796, it was taken out of Clark County. Clark had been recently taken from Bourbon, and so they opened business here January 1st, 1797. At that time, the county extended to the Virginia line. Most of that area east of here and southeast has been taken out of Montgomery County at one time or another.
Okay, how did it get the name Montgomery?
Named for General Richard Montgomery, who was a Revolutionary War hero killed in storming of Quebec.
About the courthouse, could you give us some information on the courthouse prior to this?
Yeah. This is the fifth one standing on this site. We think there was one log building, temporary building prior to that just across the street, but this one was built in 1960 as a replacement for one built in 1890. This building is, I think, the fifth.
Okay. How did the town itself, do you know how the town was selected in being county seat?
Well, yes, it is in the central part of the county, but it was a town, a settlement before the county was formed. It was a little trading center here. The formation of roads, the development of roads, the old Indian trace from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, the Great Warriors trace went through here, and the early settlers used it, and that was the early name for the town was Little Mountain Town. It was named for a very large Indian mound, which was a landmark along this trail, which has been torn down by an early settler to build his house on it. But that was the original name, and was later compromised to Mount Sterling, and the Scotchman wanted his hometown of Stirling, Scotland, added to it, so it became Mount Sterling. We're located near some very attractive state parks, some very scenic areas, the Red River Gorge areas, just 20 miles away. Some other areas in East Kentucky were very scenic, we feel are close, as well as we've got facilities here that people can enjoy the Lexington area and the Horse Farm area as well, going from here, as well as taking in the scenic areas to the east of us. But I don't believe we've taken full advantage of that, and that's one thing that local people, along with guidance maybe from state officials, could strengthen our employment, our economy on that level.
Okay. Are there any special events that the county or the city participate in annually?
Oh, one of the best known ones is the County Court Day, which is the third Monday in October of each year, when it's mainly performed, although it used to be once a month, the third Monday in each month. But it's a day that's really not promoted locally. People just know when it is. It's not advertised. Sometimes there are articles written prior to the time it comes up, but there's no advertising. People just have been accustomed to coming here for a great many years on the third Monday in October. Now it's gotten to be where it's a weekend thing. It starts on the latter part of the prior week and runs through Monday, the third Monday.
And what do they do?
Well, I don't know. There are just a lot of people here, mainly. It used to be a great trading day. They'd trade livestock. People would come to town maybe just the one time a month, and it got to be a great trading day. Now you have a tremendous number of vendors here, both trading, maybe not antiques, but been selling a lot of food, and it's...
Look out, we got a cannon behind
good.
us.
I just wanted to step in here for a second, Judge, and say I have been down personally to this Mount Sterling Court Day about 2 or 3 times, and I can recall doing a little knife swapping, a little seeing some old guns and pistols traded, and a little bit of cars, and if you don't watch out, they'll swap you out of your girlfriend if they get a half chance.
It's a great trading day and a lot of fun, but I can't think of any particular functions that take place.
Nice to be here with you, though.
And John, glad to have you guest in Mount Sterling, Montgomery County.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Carlisle, the county seat of Nicholas County. Nicholas County population, 7,157. Area square miles, 197. Nicholas County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
We're standing in front of the Nicholas County Courthouse. It's located in Carlisle, Kentucky. With me we have 2 gentlemen who are local historians, and I'm going to ask both of them to introduce themselves.
I'm Kite Allison from Nicholas County.
Okay.
I'm Harry D. Galbraith, Nicholas County.
Would you like to share with us some information on the history of Nicholas County?
Some brief notes I have here on Nicholas County. Nicholas County received its name December 1799. George Nicholas, a prominent figure in the convention that framed Kentucky's first constitution in 1792. Nicholas is the 42nd county in order of formation. Nicholas County was inaugurated from the territory of Bourbon and Mason counties territory. The first court that was held in Nicholas County was at Blue Licks in August 1800. The second courthouse in Ellisville on Route 68, built of log, 1805, on the James Ellis farm. The county seat then moved to Carlisle. The log courthouse was dismantled and moved and placed near where our library is today. Then a brick courthouse was built in 1818. A second brick courthouse was built and used until the present one, which was built in 1893. A Mr. Concart donated the grounds for public buildings. A flag on our present courthouse, the only one of its kind in existence, was placed there a few years after World War I, which would be maybe about 1920. We cannot talk much about Nicholas County without mentioning Daniel Boone, the intrepid Daniel Boone, who came from North Carolina through the Cumberland Gap to Kentucky and blazed a trail was the head of the pioneers who blazed a trail for this part of Kentucky to be settled.
Okay.
Many people living in Nicholas County today are direct descendants of the pioneers who wrested a living from the soil and the woodland. The rocks and rills, the valleys and the hills of Nicholas County hold steadfastly roots deeply embedded and will remain forever. Sons of Nicholas County did their part in the wars, which were the Revolutionary, Civil, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
You were telling me something interesting about the construction of the courthouse and how they dug up the basement. Could we talk about that?
Yes. It was dug by the cattle. They took cattle and put them in scrapers and plows and plowed it out, and then brought the dirt down here and made this fill that stands behind us. And very little of that was dug by hand because they had cattle and they had scrapers, which cattle was used in place of horses. And people mention cattle, well, they don't understand what we did have work cattle back in those days.
Okay. Do you want to share with us, you were talking about the battle that had taken place?
Oh, yes, the Battle of the Lower Blue Lick, writing the poem and have it ready for the Bicentennial Day, which was the 19th day of August in 1982 there. So I was trying to get it off on someone else, some of the school teachers, but they wouldn't let me go. So I get up in the night, which was a night watchman also there, and walk the ravines as it come to me. It goes like this: to whom it may all concern, across the Licking River, where the scarlet life once fled, lies ranks of Colonel John Todd and our Kentucky dead, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, and the echo sounds of Kentucky rifles faded away that day, August the 19th, 1782.
That's beautiful. Mr. Allison, we were talking earlier about your lifestyle. I think it's something worth sharing.
Well, I was a poor boy brought up, spending 2 years away from home in the Army of Occupation. And then, after my parents died, living practically backwoodsman's life. Very little food that I buy. I get it from the soil, or I get it by hunting, fishing, and that way. And I love it because my people had the same life, and I felt like I was no better than they was. And my people in a little place, Myers, Kentucky, which was called Black Hawk, Kentucky, which our play will come on this time from that. And we have several old cemeteries around concerning people, the early settlers that settled in around Myers Station, which is 6 miles out of here. And they are buried. And we have 3 cemeteries in a close range of where I was brought up and raised, where such as the Locks, Myers Parish, and we even have the old church that Dr. Parrish built over 200 years ago. And we are very fond of it. We have a little trouble with the state wanting to come in and claim a lot of that. Put a claim upon it or put it under bondage, which going around it. But we are not going to let them do it if we can keep from it, because they're no better than me or you are. They are the burial grounds of our people. And I'm talking about our people, not somebody else's, which we wouldn't do them that way. In other words, the cemeteries belongs to the people that laid there, in other words.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. What we want to try to do for each county is promote tourism. Could you tell us what would be some things of historical interest for people to come through that are coming through your county to see?
I say our little museum down here, Historical Society, you'll see something there, and then still back to Ken Cart's grave. I think you will find more reality there than anywhere else in this part of the town. And
I think the thing is very nice, all the records and things that they got down to the Historical Society place here on the railroad. They're up to date, which is another man works with me, which is very good in history.
The depot building as it stands today was built in started in 11 and finished in 12. In 1978, the Nicholas County Historical Society purchased the building from the L&N Railroad. I was very well pleased to have served as a president for 27 months during the restoration of the depot. And I would like to say here and now, anyone coming through Carlisle or make it a purpose to come through Carlisle, and I will be glad to take you a tour through our depot. Okay. That is on Route 68. It is called Carnico, and that word was formed for Carlisle and Nicholas County. Okay. See, it spells Carnico. It's a beautiful and wonderful place. There's a huge lake there that covers many, many acres, and it's a full golf course, and it's very active today. And on the new road to Paris, we have Jockey International, which manufactures undergarments and so forth. It's been here for several years and employs several people. And we are told that a small factory is coming right here in town in one of our empty buildings. We hope that it materializes.
Okay. What is the other main industry in your county?
Nicholas County has been noted all down through the years for its farming, which consisted of tobacco and corn and hay, and also cattle and sheep. Nicholas County really grew good tobacco. I know because I raised it here in this county. I was a farmer and a grocer.
Okay, great. Now I wanted to ask you one question about the special event you hold every year in July. It's some kind of festival?
Yeah, at the end of the Blackberry Festival, after the parade, we put on this play. We go to the school and get ready for the play, and then we have a man that brings us in a covered wagon, and then we put on the play after the parade is over.
Mount Olivet, the county seat of Robertson County. Robertson County population, 2,255. Area square miles, 100. Rank, 119th. Robertson County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
Established in 1867. It was named for George Robertson, who was born in 1790.